Taking note of the time and the presence of quorum, I'd like to bring this March 5th, 2026 meeting of the Department of Public Works Building Committee to order. We are here at Town Hall Room 204. If anyone wishes to, who's not a member of the committee, wishes to make any comments, they certainly may. We'll hold it to a 3-minute time frame. First order of business, review and approve minutes from previous meeting. Tom had put those together of the October 15th meeting. Anyone has any comments or corrections? Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept the minutes as written for October 15th, 2025. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous. Okay. New and special business. First item, vote on proposed phased approach to option 4B. Tom, do you want to lead off on this? Or you want me to?
Whatever you prefer, Mr. Chair. I'd be happy to give some color unless you'd like to.
Yeah, why don't you give us a little background?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to see everybody tonight. So what you see in your packet is, and on the agenda, is a discussion and a vote for a phased approach to option 4B. If you recall at our last meeting, I believe in October now, it's been quite a while, we had a pretty lengthy discussion on the different options that were provided from Arrow Street on moving forward. And the committee had made the unanimous decision, if I'm correct on that, on supporting option 4B, which would focus on two different things. One, on building a brand new structure that would house mechanical space, workshops, spaces for staff storage and staff, as well as administrative offices and meeting spaces. And then a second focus of that project was to renovate and repurpose the current facility for a storage garage and vehicle staging area. At the time, Arrow Street had indicated to us that we could get, I think, about 15 years out of that current structure. And after continued conversations with staff and then a presentation discussion with the select board, we felt as a group that taking the approach from a town side, that taking the approach of 4B in one project where you're building a brand new building and then putting quite a bit of money into a structure that's going to last potentially 15 years may not be the most fiscally sound option at this point. So what we've pivoted to and proposed to the select board, the town manager proposed to the select board, was to look at option 4B, but in two phases. And phase one would tackle the most important piece of the puzzle that we've all been discussing. The select board has discussed before, finance committee's expressed it as well, and that would be what to do with staff, workshops, and mechanic area. And option 4B phase one builds a brand new facility that gives an area for these staff members to be able to perform their duties and work on a daily basis in a safe environment and in a facility that could last up to 15 years. Once that's done, we would then turn our focus on phase two, which would be what to do with the current building and what to do with long-term storage and garage space. So what you have in front of you are a few items. The first item is a memo from the town manager to the finance committee outlining the presentation to the select board on February 23rd and breaking down what a phase one approach looks like and a phase two approach looks like in an option 4B. The second document you have in front of you, which we'll discuss as a separate item, but that's a town meeting draft warrant article that spells out the next steps in terms of requesting funding for design that would get us construction docs and ready for a project, a construction project. And then the third document you see, very small, are updated renderings of what a 4B Phase 1 option looks like, the site plan or the floor plan laydown. This is with comments from the Director of DPW and his staff, and then further discussions from the project team. And then the second page of that document also shows what the elevations would look like on site. So that is what we're here to discuss tonight, and I would pass it to Dean if he has, or Corey if they have anything to add to that.
So I think, holding off on doing anything of substance to the existing building, we've wrestled with this back and forth, trying to figure out what's the best way of moving ahead. Obviously, from a fiscally responsible, cheap old Yankee point of view, I hate the idea about putting any kind of substantial money into a building and saying, well, okay, we'll get 10 or 15 years out of it. It just, 10 or 15 years is pretty much a blink of an eye, the way town meeting works. So, and people are going to remember when we come back for another bite that, gee, didn't you just put $5 million into that building or whatever the number was? So I think that's a problem. I think the existing building, from a point of view of public works, even the existing footprint of the building, if we could open up some of it, probably is not sufficient for what they view the storage needs for all of the equipment going forward. So it would be inadequate at best. On the other hand, there are those in some of the other boards and committees that are unconvinced that we need that big a building to store motorized equipment in. And rather than just continue to engage in that discussion again and again, which we've beaten that one to death for probably 3 years now, it's a good idea just to take a pause on it. And I think the third issue that I find interesting with this is that one of the things that we don't have in the newly designed buildings, we still don't have a good wash bay for equipment. So if we hold off on that a little bit and use the existing facility to wash trucks as we've been doing right now, and then eventually when we do build that equipment garage, we can build it sufficiently sized and sufficiently designed so we can actually have a fully filled out wash bay, which that wash bay ends up costing well over $500,000. So it's an expensive item. But it will not be that huge an item if it's part of a fairly inexpensively designed equipment storage building. So I think we achieve a number of things. The most critical need that everybody here has agreed on, and I think Select Board, and I think the majority of the Finance Committee as well have agreed on, let's focus on safety and proper workspace for our employees. And we'll put equipment storage issue kind of on the back burner. So I think this achieves this, and it also obviously is going to reduce the total project cost, at least in the short term. So I know DPW has been interested in providing much superior space for storage of equipment, and this obviously does not satisfy their needs. So there's still going to be that itch that needs to get scratched. But I'd rather go for half a project and get it approved than have no project at all. Corey, you're the most immediately impacted by all this decision-making. If you have anything you'd like to say.
And no, I agree. I mean, when we started this process and we were looking at the whole complex, the conversations couldn't get away from the transfer station. So the committee made that judgment to separate that out so they could focus on kind of the core issue. And as we got into the facility project, we ran into the same thing where we couldn't get away from the conversation of the number of vehicles, what's needed, the size of the storage. So I think this decision to phase it, to get to the sort of the immediate problem of a safe, proper workspace for the staff and get that resolved, and then get back to the vehicle storage. I think it's kind of a good approach to refine that focus so that we can hopefully move forward with it.
Any questions, comments? Ann?
Okay, so we're building a new building for the staff. We're leaving the old building standing. What do we have to do to the old building to keep it standing for the time lag between having it be reused and having it new? Do we have to do anything to it?
Tom?
Thank you. And that's a great question. While we don't know specifically what we need to do at this point, we can tell you that as part of this next design effort, they will look at the building. We do have some structural analysis that's being done, so we'll have an idea of what we need to do short term to make sure that it's a feasible building to be used for a period of time. So it won't look like what we had planned before, where there'll be a large amount of structural analysis and review and work done on it, but we'll incorporate some minor repairs so the building can continue to operate.
Can that sort of repairs come out of the capital budget?
At this point, that would be part of the project.
Oh, it's still be part of the project?
Right. It's just on a much less scale.
Okay. You know, when we were still with Sampson and Weston, and they had a two-phased thing, two-phased project. By having it a one-phase project, we saved a great deal of money. I'll just say that the town has a unfortunate history of doing half a job and saying they're going to do the other half some other time, and it doesn't get done. And I probably won't be around to see the fact that it doesn't get done, but that's why I'm concerned, really concerned about the stability, I guess I would say, of the part that we're going to leave where we're going to store equipment.
Well, I think one of the things, and we'll certainly be able to explore this a lot more once we have some design money approved at town meeting in May. Some of the initial considerations we had to try to reuse the existing building for equipment storage was some ideas about, can we basically gut the office area out, and can we put some very large overhead doors in various locations in the building? And once we got into that, then we really got into the issue of how many holes can you cut in the side of this building before you've destabilized it. So I think the work that we're looking at is going to be a much more modest amount of change. Probably what we've got is not going to have the impact on the structural stability of the building compared to what we had envisioned. And you know, Arrow Street was having a tough time with the whole idea about, well, how many doors do you want where the offices are and how big do they need to be? And once you've opened up that end of the building with something really high so you can bring trucks in, then you're obviously impacting things like the existing fire suppression sprinkler system that's in the office area, which is at a fairly low level. And the big thing is, you know, knocking the big holes inside of the building. So this is going to be a very to the degree possible, it's going to be very gentle renovation of the existing building, just to give us something so that we've got, I'm thinking 5 years before we have to do a serious look at, what exactly do we need in the way of a storage facility. I draw a parallel with the decision that we made a little over 10 years ago. We had a plan to build a new senior center, and it was really rough sledding at that time. We were looking at $14 million for a senior center. And one of the points that I think was well developed by our friends in the Finance Committee at that point was, said, we're not sure your senior population is going to increase that much, and we're not sure you're really going to need a senior center. So rather than build a $14 million building, why don't you just lease something for a few years just to prove the need for it? So that's what we did. And we took them at their word, and what we've looked at is we've found that indeed the senior population in Acton has increased. And, we made substantial amounts of rental payments for the temporary space that we're in, and we've just extended the lease for another 5 years. But I think we've proved the concept. We've had a large enough facility so that we've been able to provide all kinds of services to seniors. And in fact, I think if we would have look again at what you really need for a senior center, we probably would have come to the consideration that maybe what we had designed 11 or 12 years ago would not be sufficient anyway. Rather than needing to be smaller, it actually needs to be bigger. But I think, you will have the opportunity to prove this out to folks. Greg.
Before I joined this committee as a member, I spoke at one of the meetings, and I think one of the things that I recommended at the time was the one step as opposed to phased approach as a way of saving money. So other people recommended that too. I was not alone. But as somebody who urged this committee, the faster you move, the less likely there are going to be cost overruns. Let me then take a look at this new proposal and give you the questions that I'm sure my colleagues are going to be asking next week. Almost like I can hear them. The evidence that I've had or seen for cost overruns being dragged out is because you've got 18 sub-bids that all have separate contracts, and the interaction of which is always, I'm waiting for him to turn up to do his part, and she's not there yet. But I'm billing you for this time I'm sitting around. So if you break it into these two discrete parts, I am hopeful, but I think evidence would be really useful that says, oh, well, if you're only doing part A, that doesn't run you the risk of running cost overruns because we're doing part A in a discrete time period. While we may talk about phasing, phase 2 hasn't even been approved yet. We're not keeping people sitting around waiting for years before phase 2 gets to town meeting. So the likelihood of cost overruns is, we're using a different definition of phase here than I was concerned about 2 years ago. At least that's my hope. But if evidence can replace hope, I'm more likely to be a little more convincing when the Finance Committee takes this up.
Well, here's a couple of considerations. You know, some of our original plans with phasing the project, we were looking at taking part of a building down and then put part of a building back up again. We were trying to move people in and out of a partially constructed facility and working around an existing operation. Whereas the nice thing about this is that we can continue to use the existing building during the construction period exactly as it's been used for the last 10, 15, 20 years. The offices are in place, the mechanics are in place. We don't have a moving expense. We don't have the inconvenience of trying to find rental space to put people in. And although certainly the site is going to be tight, but basically you can turn the entire site for the new building over to the contractor and put a fence around it. It's their problem. So you don't have the coordination issues that we would have if we tried to do it in the original phased approach. So I think that's
That's what I was hoping.
yeah.
And the only, it's like a trigger word. When you say phase, somebody said phasing 2 years ago. You said phasing. Pointing the finger at me now. And the answer is, yeah, I did, but I think I was talking about something different than what we're talking about here. I just want to be, when I'm defending myself in my use of the word phase, I just want to be clear that that was bad phasing, this is good phasing, if you know what I mean.
I think, you know, some of the other things that I can think of we would have been involved with a lot of demolition work with the existing building. And we would have been involved with, you know, hazardous materials mitigation, because I'm sure that there's probably something in there that we haven't found yet. But basically, at least in the construction of the new building, it's a clean site. We're not dealing with those sorts of issues. We're not hauling materials away. And although it doesn't address the whole phasing issue, one of the good things is, I'm sure you'll breathe a sigh of relief, is now the Supreme Court has struck down most of the tariffs. And I'll give that with
Don't get me started. You want to get me started?
No.
It's, you know, I don't know, you know, when the next shoe is going to drop, but at least
Let me let me clarify which tariffs the Supreme Court struck down, which were the reciprocal tariffs, versus the tariffs on steel and aluminum, which were authorized in a different way as national security. You can't let those Canadians be making our steel, heaven forbid. And unfortunately, those tariffs are still 50%. And depending on the mood of the decision maker and the day of the week, I don't expect it to go down. But it could always go sideways or up.
other questions, comments, points folks would like to make? I think that
There is a definite advantage in the phasing because of the differences and the fact that we will not have to rent space for staff or rent space for trucks. I think that that will save, I should think that would make the FinCom happy, and that will save money, although some of them wanted to break up the DPW and have them, the trucks on Eastern Avenue forever. But that, I think, went by the wayside. But my problem still is making sure, I can see a new building, you know, that's straightforward. I still need to I think we need to hone in on the, what sort of costs are going to make the old building useful so it, so it doesn't fall down on the top of the heads of the guys that are inside. Or, I mean, just ballparks or something.
Tom?
I do, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to note that we're not in risk of that happening currently, and there's no anticipation that the building is in imminent danger into the next few years. So I just want to make sure I mention that. And then clarify a little bit. So what I was meaning by we would incorporate any type of structural or repairs needed to the building. Right now, it looks like it's primarily cosmetic to the exterior, maybe some interior damage to some of the walls. Once the office space or the office spaces are all vacated, we could reuse that as storage space and be able to utilize some internal staff to break down some walls to create more room. From a long-term standpoint, that would still be included in an option 4B Phase 2 approach. So that would still be a question that we would have to answer in a few years on what to do with that building overall. But at this point, and we heard from Arrow Street when they gave the presentation that we're not in risk of the building falling down or in imminent danger. And that would be one of the things that would be repaired. Unless we could use it for greater ventilation inside the garage. Yeah.
So that's kind of where we are as far as the phased approach. And that concept has been embraced by the select board at this point. I know it's been presented to the finance committee. Just the way things were moving and trying to gather more information. And now Arrow Street and Western Sampson and PMA have been working diligently on trying to come up with more information. And Tom and Corey and I and others have been involved in project meetings every couple of weeks to keep up to speed on all this. So, it's developing information, but you never seem to have enough time to fully tease out all of these answers when you're faced with a hard deadline of a Maytown meeting. But I think seem to be in pretty good shape, so hopefully this committee will agree with that. Frank?
I move we approve the proposed phase approach to option 4B.
All right. Motion from Greg Jarbo, seconded by Ann Chang. Any discussion? Greg?
Ann and I rarely agree.
With that,
So if we're in agreement on this, one of us is wrong. But it's you, not me.
let's get a vote nailed down. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much. Current status of design efforts. Tom or Corey?
Corey, I can lead off and then you could add anything if you'd like. So one of the documents I called out earlier in the packet shows you some updated schematics that Corey's been working with closely with Weston and Sampson on. Those plans haven't dramatically changed, and Corey can go a little bit further into them from what was previously discussed as an option 4B building. What they've also provided are elevations, just to kind of keep everybody on the updated or on the same page on progress on the design. As Dean had mentioned, the project team has been meeting with Weston and Sampson and PMA probably every 2 or 3 weeks now. We plan on meeting later on this month And what Weston and Sampson and PMA are working towards are defined conceptual renderings that would then be submitted to a cost estimator. We're hoping that we can have it in time for town meeting. Right now, that's the question. So we'll hopefully know in the next few weeks. But progress continues. And, you know, I'd pass it to Corey to talk about any conversations that he and his team have been having on the design with Weston and Sampson.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest changes is what it was Weston Sampson was getting their head around the Arrow Street concepts. I mean, they were kind of quick schematics of what sort of looked like would work. So what Weston Sampson did using sort of that square footage was then trying to dig in a little bit more as far as the room layouts, looking at, I think, some of the things they had to add into the Arrow Street design, because that was just kind of a quick schematic for an estimate, is putting back in mechanical rooms, things like that. So they found ways to make that fit. Then they were just looking at layouts and floor plans. So as you'll see, it's really not, I say as far as room layouts, it's not very different than as we've seen, it's just smaller scopes. So as you come into the front lobby in the DPW building, you'll see the admin space where it's a smaller area. So you'll see it's kind of a storage area right there. And that's really just a space so they can have, they don't have a lot of filing cabinets, but it gives them an area that they can have something close by. You'll see the office spaces that we have now. I kind of wrap around with a meeting room. The center area is kind of where we have a little bit of file storage, layout area, and then the engineers have kind of that open area. So it's kind of a centralized spot. Same that we have the sort of the multi-purpose muster room that's a little bit bigger, so the crew can actually all fit in it. Same with the locker rooms and the bathrooms and that. So the layout wise itself hasn't really changed much. It was just getting it to fit that space and make sure it was reasonable. And then we have the workshops in the middle that the tree and grounds crew use and the highway crews use, as well as and you get into the mechanic space, things like that. And I think as far as the workshops and the mechanic space, you'll see a little bit of mezzanine space on top so that we have that little bit of extra storage there as well. And I know this is, as they're getting into it now, this is getting a little bit more detail. So they've been fine tuning door locations, things like that. So it seems to be moving along pretty well. We've gone back and forth on little details and questions. So they've refined a little bit, but I think this is sort of this is the direction that they're kind of moving in right now to sort of advance a little bit further so they can get a better reasonable estimate.
So will you have enough storage space?
I think so. I mean, I'd say half the workshop area, and will be mezzanine, and then over the sort of the back two rooms and mechanic bays is a mezzanine space as well as they have the parts and storage areas down below. So I think we'll be able to repurpose that pretty well for what we have and get rid of, why don't we have that canopy out back that's failing right now, so we be able to bring some of that equipment in. And those mezzanine spaces, when you're building these, it's a pretty cheap space to gain square footage for storage. So
It's just that you had too much stuff. I mean, I know it's very important stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't hold it well, stuff.
yes,
I'm hoping that you have enough space for all of your stuff.
yeah, I think we can make things work. I mean, this is a bigger area than we have right now. So, and then in the later phase, at least in the short term, having the existing building opened up for a little bit more vehicle storage and extra storage area, it gives us that additional swing space that we can purpose as well. So.
Does your staff like it? Or haven't I seen it?
Yeah, as we've drafted these, I have it hanging on the wall, so
Yeah.
as they come down, they can take a look at it. I haven't heard any negative comments yet, so. I know in the beginning, as we were vetting other versions than that, I was getting questions from
Yeah.
different staff just as they're looking at it. What is this or what is that? So there's been no big red flags or anything that have jumped to anyone.
I can't read these things because they're too small, but
Yeah.
but I know that one of the finance committee people decided that you didn't need any paper. So I'm wondering if you have storage for the engineering plans and all that kind of stuff, for the paper plans, which you have to have.
Yeah, we do have some storage. I mean, for the amount of stuff that we have now, that theoretically won't fit, but we've been going through trying to digitize as much as we can. So we're
Yeah.
trying to sort through a lot of that we're using. But as far as current projects and even just the billing stuff, this would be sufficient for those kind of needs.
Okay.
Yeah, another question for Corey. One of my colleagues on the Finance Committee, a different one, wondered why we needed the places to repair things as part of this facility. I believe I argued at the time, and the analog was being made, that the fire department will send out when it needs some piece of special equipment repaired. Why can't we just send out? And I said, the difference, my argument was, is if you're doing it all the time, it's better to have it in-house. If you're gonna need to send it out once in a blue moon, then it makes more financial sense to outsource that. Was I bluffing?
No, and that's correct. I mean, just take these past two storms. The sidewalk tractors went out, one blew our hydraulic line. So if we outsourced it, we just stop the sidewalk plowing and wait till we can get a mechanic in. Where the mechanics are working, they have one of them is on a route, and they'll get called back in if a repair happens. So, and then as the trucks are out there and whether there's an issue with the plow blade or an issue with one of the trucks, they're able to troubleshoot the stuff quick and get it going versus having to call an outside vendor and then wait for them to show up. If they'll show up at 2 a.m. to fix it, or if you have to wait till 5. It's things like that that really makes it critical, even on a construction job. I mean, some damage that might happen to a piece of equipment, it can come back. They can make a quick fix where otherwise you're calling in somebody and having to wait for them. So waiting for someone to show up to fix it, that basically will just stop the job for the day. So it's those quick fixes that allows the jobs to keep going a lot of times.
Feel good, I wasn't bluffing.
Okay, any other questions about the design to this point? Okay,
I've got one thing. So have we settled on an HVAC system? I know that there was a lot of discussion at one point.
at this point, I think all of the discussion has all been, it'll be electric. And I think with this new building, we're looking at air source heat pumps.
Okay.
The ground source is more expensive, my understanding anyway. Ground source is more expensive initially, but long-term, you save some money. But we're really interested in trying to bring in as modest a initial construction cost as possible.
And I thought that that's where we had landed before, but I didn't know if there were discussions from the, as we develop this 4A or 4B, excuse me, if anything had changed. I appreciate it. Makes sense.
Other questions? Okay, we'll move on. Comments on the procurement process. So Greg has some comments from one of his members in the Finance Committee about things to watch out for procurement, and I'll let Greg lead off on this, and then I can certainly address a lot of this from my perspective of the years that I was doing these kind of procurements.
Yeah.
Greg,
So yet another new member. The Finance Committee has been talking about this a lot for some reason. Yeah, it's just strange how that happens, right? Sort of maybe it's the same reason why I think you're going to make this an ongoing presentation at the library. Yeah. We should probably just have an ongoing presentation at the Finance Committee, but anyway. But one of the members works at a company that just did a major construction project in Vietnam. Now, A, it's private construction versus public construction. B, it's in Vietnam, it's not in Massachusetts. Nevertheless, what he put together was a spreadsheet of 23 different best practices that his company had come up with and saying, okay, these are the lessons that we've learned from this particular construction project. Maybe some, not all, might be applicable for you to use in Acton. And some of the information got, scrubbed out for privacy reasons. So I can't tell you which company, but I looked through the 23 suggestions, and he was right. Like, one of them said you should follow the equivalent to OSHA laws for Vietnam. I don't think we have to do that part. But it also turns out that many of the suggestions may not help us in the design phase because they're not that kind of contract. But when we get to the construction phase, which may be 2 steps down the road, but my guess is we will need to answer questions about the 2 steps down the road to get this through town meeting. Among the 23 suggestions are a good 10 or more that we can borrow that are not covered explicitly by the current Mass General laws that cover public construction, that were not envisioned when the public construction law was last updated in 2016. And we might want to borrow from. And so I can share, A, the spreadsheet of all 23, but B, also my memo, which I sent to Dean to ask for this to be on the agenda, that basically said, in going through this, I would not pretend to be an expert on public construction law today. I did work on a previous rewrite of the public construction laws in 1980. So I'm pretty familiar with the general lay of the land, but I'm not so familiar with what happened in 2016 when they got updated. So I don't want to claim something I'm not, but just using my back of the envelope analysis, there were several good suggestions, and I'll share them. But among the things we can't do because of public construction laws is a whole lot of things that you might do in private construction to get your bids lower. And it's one of the great ironies of public construction law. We are trying to protect people, so we have all of these bidding processes to make sure we get the best bids in, but we don't reform the Rube Goldberg effort of you need 18 sub-bids to get anything built, which was the way things got built in the 1930s, and that part hasn't changed in public construction law, at least not that I know of. And therefore, when you stretch out the timeframes, that's why things get expensive. It's also why when we were investigating this back in 1980, we were looking at a public construction project at the University of Massachusetts, a library. And the question was, why is it falling down? It was just built. And part of the answer was, well, there were two state senators who took bribes. Okay, they got convicted and sent to jail. One was a Democrat, one was a Republican. Mackenzie DiCarlo, yeah. Ron McKenzie was from Lexington, and as a reporter for the Lexington Minuteman, that was big news. But it turned out the bribery was round-off error. The real problem was the intersection of all these 18 different groups. Anytime Group A had to meet with Group B to get something done, if it fell down, the group would say, oh, it was them, not us. We did our job right. And that's one of the inherent things that's built into public construction that makes it extremely more expensive than private construction, even in Massachusetts. So the contract negotiation best practices that are recent can help us. They are worth taking a hard look at because, yeah, it's probably not needed until we get to the construction phase. But herding those cats is what keeps us on budget, keeps us on time, and building that into the contracts will give whoever the clerk of the works is, and I assume it's the fellow who's been visiting us from time to time over the last year and a half. I'm guessing, whoever it is, whoever has to herd the cats ultimately is going to want some contract language. So one of the suggestions is, you know, when you have a change order, can you do that off the cuff, or do you need it in writing? And by the way, how much change does the change order require? And little things like defining that early, particularly in a contract, will keep us on budget and on schedule. And if we're worried about a phase two, if we get phase one done right, then the odds of phase two go way up. So I will share that. Or actually, Dean, you have it, or Tom?
I don't have it.
Okay, Tom,
Well,
you have it though, right?
I have it in my email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I can email it.
That's okay. After the meeting tomorrow, I can do that.
Yeah, but that's what you will see in there. There's, again, two things. A spreadsheet, which came from Alex, based on his analysis of his company's work in Vietnam. And then a memo that basically says, okay, looking through these 23, here are the 10 we can steal, or pardon me, apply. Here are ones that we might want to modify. Here's a half a dozen that just, you know, the law will prevent us from doing that.
Everybody show them to us or not?
Yeah. But can I do it here?
It's a rather lengthy document. I'd be happy to email it to everybody. I can do that in the next 2 minutes if preferred.
Does the clerk of the works? That's his job.
Yeah, let me,
Well, it is his job, but he's also working from, quote, 18 contracts. And that's then where we leverage contract language to our advantage, I hope.
let me address a couple of the points. Just to put it in context, and I think if we get the spreadsheet and the memo to everybody, people can take a look at it. And everybody brings their own background to the committee like this. So, you know, as everybody knows, I worked for a number of years doing this kind of project management here for the town, this building, the library, public safety facility, amongst others. And I was certified as a Mass Certified Public Purchasing Official, which was one of the things that came out as a result of the construction reform law, is to create that certification process and updates that. I know that, Tom has got that certification. I think Corey does. Eric? Okay, you managed to avoid that bullet. Okay, Tom Doolittle.
Good.
So, I think, so I had to keep getting recertified and was working with all of this up until the time of my retirement in 2015. Subsequent to that, quite a bit has changed. So my expertise is a little newer than Greg's is, but
Yeah.
it gets old pretty quick. One of the important things that makes this a lot easier, and I was sort of just in the cusp of it, was the state brought in the requirement that an independent owner's project manager be hired for these kind of projects early on, cradle to grave, which is what we've had to do recently. And initially it was only for very, very large projects, and then gradually more and more projects came under the umbrella requirement. So, we've noticed a bunch of times about PMA, and they've assisted us with a number of good-sized projects, North Acton Fire Station being one of them. And one of the nice things that I find about having a project manager like that is that they're sort of an independent third party.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, when we didn't have someone like that, I've had a number of occasions where issues came up during the course of construction, and the general contractor said it was the architect's fault, and the architect said it was the general contractor's fault. And we didn't have enough in-house expertise to determine whose fault it really was. And we were actually relying heavily on the architectural firm to do a lot of the project management, which my experience is, for many of them, this was not their field of expertise.
Right.
So I think having someone like PMA in there, which is now mandatory, gives you a much more closely controlled project, and certainly handles a whole lot in the way of change orders. Everything's got to be written, everything's got to be documented 9 ways to Sunday. So I think a lot of that, having them, and their only job is to basically facilitate that. So I think that's a major improvement that has happened in public construction in the last 10 or 20 years. That's just kind of what I've looked at. And then, of course, we can look at the suggestions and the spreadsheet come through, and as times go by, we can probably even have some of those ideas we've come up with and run them by PMA.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, certainly our construction contracts that are all going to be reviewed by Anderson and Krieger. But it is sort of a different critter. The final sub-bid laws are frankly a nightmare. And, projects that I've worked on, you have a final sub-bidder for, say, a mechanical specialty that comes in and throws in a low-ball bid, and the general contractor that is probably going to get the job is already still involved in litigation against that final sub-bidder, so that that these guys are ready to duke it out at the time of the bid opening, and it just goes downhill from there. That's a problem. Obviously, the prevailing wage law has tremendous impact on the cost of all of these projects as well. And I could go through a whole list of things. I'm sure that they probably created a few problems that I was not aware of that's happened in the last 10 years, but, so I'd say, thanks for the input and let Alex know we appreciate it, and we'll take it under due consideration and see. I'm not going to rule out anybody's advice and suggestions. If there's something that we can figure out that's going to help us, why, that's worthwhile, but, it's,
I think that's all he was hoping for. This is not a list of demands. This is a, and he acknowledged that. He said, I realize that this, we may be taking apples and oranges here in some cases, but if there's anything that we can glean from this and leverage, let's put it this way. I want to encourage members of the Finance Committee who want to help this project succeed. And I'm delighted to share credit with anybody who has got 23 ideas, even if we only take part of them.
okay, well, we'll look forward to seeing that. I've got it, but I'm sure everybody else will certainly benefit from taking a look at it, and it'll be an ongoing conversation. Any other comments on that? All right. Item D, discuss annual town meeting appropriation request for design. Tom?
Yes, thank you. So if you're following along in your packet, it would be the next document after the plans. And we had talked about this really briefly, but what you're seeing in front of you is a sneak peek of what will be provided in the warrant. This document was, or these pages were included in the warrant of draft articles that the select board reviewed on Monday and voted to recommend. This outlines what we've been discussing tonight. This is an appropriation request of, the funding would be for $900,000, but we would use reappropriated funding to offset that $900,000 to lower it a little bit. The design, we're anticipating, while we're still identifying what the final proposal from Weston and Sampson will look like, we are anticipating that the $900,000 design appropriation request will fully fund design through construction docs. So what does that mean? That means that when we get to a position where we have 100% design and we have cost estimates, we can, and we'll have that funded, we can confidently go to the voters, to town meeting and say, this is the 100% documents. These are the 100% cost estimates. This is the best number we're going to get until we have bids in our hand. So that puts us in a pretty good position. That puts us in a position where the next request will be for construction. This is a result of a lot of work that had been done originally by Weston and Sampson on that original building. If you recall, what you're seeing now in this phase one approach and option 4B looks pretty similar to the concepts that we discussed in 40% design development for the original effort. And that's allowed us to be able to save a little bit on this next phase. So this will be included on the warrant. It'll be transmitted to the Finance Committee, of course, for review and consideration. And we intend on getting out the information as much as possible and are available to answer any questions if anybody's watching or will watch the video. The manager's office is always happy to give any information or answer questions, and I'm sure the DPW director would be happy to as well. So if you have any questions about this document, I'm happy to answer them.
So we can go out with 90% for construction costs? You're saying 900,000 is being requested to advance the design for the DPW project to at least 90%. So we can get construction costs based on 90% rather than 100.
Yep. Yeah, those costs will be pretty square on of what we can expect. Because once you hit the 100%, so from the 90% to the 100%, it's typically any comments from the owner. So it'd be the project team, if we have any comments on those plans, that would change those. So if there was a door that was opening one way, but we wanted to open it to the other, it's non-significant changes at that point. So it wouldn't be really impacting construction costs.
So they wouldn't they wouldn't be considered change orders.
No, so that's a different term. So the change order is a completely separate term that we would be dealing with when we get into construction.
Yeah.
If there were unforeseen circumstances that came up as part of construction, but that would be separate than this.
Okay,
What we would be putting to bid will be 100% design docs, which would be the final plans, and it'll be 300 or 400 pages of specifications outlining every single trade and exactly how one bolt should look in a door. Take that and put it all throughout the entire building. So it's pretty detailed.
Other questions? I'm sure there's going to be some minor wordsmithing on all of these warrant articles between now and when we actually print the warrant, but I think it's pretty well summarizes it. All right.
you said there's other funds, you said there was additional funds for the 900,000? You said appropriate, well, we're going to appropriate and raise or borrow 900,000. You said there was another pile of money someplace to help?
Yes, I'm just trying to see if I can get that exact breakdown in front of me. But essentially, there are unspent funds in previous appropriations that would be reappropriated to drive this cost down a little bit. So the borrowing dollar amount would be less than $900,000. That's the target.
So the finance committee is going to want to know exactly, of course.
Sure, I believe that's identified in the budget book that's published on the town manager's page and was previously transmitted to the finance committee. I may be able to find that while we're sitting here.
Yes, it was transmitted to the account.
Just so long as it's there, just so long as you have it.
Yeah, I have it, but if it's on the midterm, I haven't like done my crash study yet. I mean, I only have it out to about 2 decimals.
Mr. Chair, I could answer that question. So on budget book page 15, if you want to note it, so when you do have an opportunity to look at the pretty large document, we are proposing the project cost that's borrowed at $720,106. That is a $900,000 appropriation that is reduced by previously authorized funds from a prior DPW design. It's Article 6 from 2023. So we'll be borrowing $720,000 of that $900,000.
That makes a big difference.
Yep.
So, I mean, well, I'm not really sure, I'm not really sure we should put the $900,000 figure out unless there's some sort of law that makes, since we're using previously appropriated funds, because 900 is a lot, but, 700 is a lot, but 900 is even more. If we could make it less, it would sound better, I think.
That gets a little tricky. So the appropriation request is $900,000. So that's the article.
Yeah.
But the way that it's funded is 2 different ways.
Okay.
And that's further clarified.
Okay.
And it just a note to my colleague, the finance committee wants to know that it's 900,000. And if it gets lower, that's always good. If it was 720,000 and somebody said, but look, there's a backdoor way you're making it 900,000, that would be bad. So
So you think,
we're
it's
doing
better
it.
to come in the higher number and then do less?
Yes.
Okay. I can see that. Makes us look better.
Problem. Somebody's going to ask that question.
They will.
I'm glad you did here first. So,
Remember, page 15. That'll give you all the information you need.
okay, any other questions? All right, we'll move on to review DPW Building Committee Annual Town Meeting Report. Thank you.
Can I thank you for turning what was a rubric for tackling the DPW Building Committee into something I have now seen not only in the minutes of the meeting, not only in the warrant article, now I see it in the town report, and the affordability, longevity, wow, it's almost like it was a plan.
Credit, well, credit is due. Plus cut and paste is really great too.
Oh, is that it? Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever works.
If,
Are you going to add a picture? A drawing?
Would you all like to stand for a picture? I'd be happy to take
no,
one
no,
after
no,
this.
no,
It would be fantastic
No,
because
no,
everybody's put in.
I meant to the.
We could.
I meant to the project.
But honestly, I think everybody's put in so much time and effort. It would be fantastic to grab a photo of the team,
No,
if the chair's okay with it.
I meant for the project, the town
Well, yeah,
report.
but documentation is always important.
No way.
so they are assembling the town report kind of as we speak. So this is your opportunity to get immortalized. I will, after the meeting, I will show you folks the picture that I was sent very recently. It is, yes, indeed. So it's me and my vice chair with these really nice hair nets because we were at the ribbon cutting for Wonder. So it's anything. The hairnets were awful. It's an interesting concept. But it was so busy there, you couldn't really appreciate it. I mean, it was a mob scene.
Because I think publicly it opens tomorrow, it's only been private.
I think they had some test runs. In any case, so would anybody care to move to accept this report to be included in the annual report?
So moved.
I seconded it. I thought it was very nice.
Moved and seconded.
Yes, I think that's fair.
All
What are we going to do?
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we got that done. Administrative matters and updates. Next meeting dates. Tom, any suggestions?
Yes, in preparation of town meeting, we should have all the documents pretty well underway in the next week or so, and we can circulate that to the committee. What I would recommend is holding a meeting on, or at least holding a hold for the meeting on April 30th, that Thursday, at the same time at 7 p.m. The reason why I recommend that is if we do have any updated information that we'll be bringing to town meeting, it would be great to present that to the committee so you're on the same page. The select board would potentially discuss it the Monday beforehand, but it would be good to roll it out to the committee afterwards if you're all in agreement.
Last Thursday of the month.
Yep.
The last day.
Okay.
Would that prior day Wednesday, the 29th, work instead?
Yes. I know.
I'd be happy to hold, send around just a hold for now, and then we can populate it with information later on.
So I will have Joanne get in touch with you guys for the thing that's the open house at the library. Okay.
Well, actually, just one question. Yeah, this is the Colombo, just one last question. Yeah. Give me a sense of Plan A and Plan B. If town meeting votes yes, what happens next? If town meeting votes no, what happens next?
When town meeting votes yes, I'm going to be an optimist. When town meeting votes yes, what we would do is give Weston and Sampson an approval to move forward. We'd execute a contract for a proposed design next step. And then we would probably move our meetings to project meetings to every week. And then we would look at creating a defined schedule for the DPW building committee to have Weston and Sampson in, PMA in, and we would go through a similar process that we went through initially with the first 40% design effort, but it would be less time consuming, I think. I don't think that it'll be 6 or 7 or 10 months or a year or so. I think that the design would progress pretty quickly. So we'd probably be looking at meetings in late May or early June, and then at least every month from there on. The anticipation, and depending on Weston and Sampson's schedule, is that it would go pretty quickly. So we could be looking at discussing options late fall or the beginning of the year. But if it's appropriated, or approved, that's the steps. If it's not approved, I think we would have to go back to the drawing board and discuss with the select board and then come back to this committee with some options.
So once Sampson and Weston and Sampson finish their plans, so next, not this town meeting, but the next year's town meeting, we will ask for the construction funds.
I think that's still up for discussion, and that depends on the progression of design from Weston and Sampson. It hasn't been identified what we would aim for a town meeting, but I believe that's up for conversation still. And that would be part of the effort. We define that.
I think one of the things that we would certainly want to do is bring the construction funding vote to the ballot. We'd want to do a town meeting, whether it's a special town meeting or an annual town meeting first, so we can do the presentation and then bring it to the ballot afterwards. Because I think we lost a good opportunity to tell our story. Might still not have succeeded, but I feel better about it.
Yeah, that was also the advice I got from the DPW director down in Dennis when I was trying to figure out how they mystically had gotten their building approved. And he said one of the things they did was town meeting first, make sure that everybody who attends town meeting is really only in the hundreds, but they are the hundreds who tend to have friends that number in the thousands that then vote at the town election. And the town election then became, yes, we understand the complexity of this. Yes, this is something that's got to be done. So that was one of the recommendations he made that I think makes sense for us too.
Dean, do we have a schedule from Weston and Sampson yet on how long it'll take them to complete the design?
I think I think they've kicked around the past or talked about, perhaps having this thing completed by sometime in the fall. You know, kind of a November timeframe.
They're at basically a DD level now, design development.
Yeah. I mean, it's,
Yeah. They got to recook it a little bit,
they,
but
they got to recook it because
Shouldn't take-
they're reacting to the stuff that Arrow Street came up with.
yeah, it's a simple building. It shouldn't take too long.
It's all straight lines. The Memorial Library, one of my favorite projects over here, one of the complicating features they had is in the children's section, the little reading room was a dodecahedron, an 11-sided figure, which probably added a huge quantity. And then we had the library director's office, which is a hexagon. Everything in DPW is all right angles, so.
Move we adjourn.
Motion, can I get a second? Second. Moved and second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much.